Learned from Tyler 1, by the way. Yeah.
There's a photo with Tyler where he's like doing his signature pose. I'm like, oh man. It's one for the record.
I'm the resident e-boy of the group, I guess.
Sure, he is.
Sweet. I think we're going to start.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to PAX East. Congratulations surviving COVID and getting here. Nice to be back in person, right? So, my name is Garrett Fuller. I work for Repop, and happy enough to moderate the panel with the T1 team, talk a little bit about esports, where things are going, what's happening. So I will turn it over very quickly to Joe and to Evan, but I'm going to introduce them first. So Joe Marsh, CEO of T1 Entertainment and Sports. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the esports scene?
So I'm a pro gamer. I played Call of Duty or CS 1.6. I come from a non-traditional regular job background. I got into gaming when Comcast bought the Philadelphia Fusion slot. I was the youngest person on the floor by like 20 years. They're like, hey, why don't you help out? Tucker Roberts and I have been kind of running around Korea and America building out the gaming initiatives for Comcast Spectacor. We relaunched G4 TV in November, our gaming network, digital and linear. We did the T1 joint venture back in 2019, so we're going on 3 years now. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's been definitely different than my 9 to 5 days. I like being able to wear a hoodie as business casual, which is kind of neat.
Nice. Next to me is Evan Frasca. Go ahead, Evan. Director of Talent Management.
Yeah, so I've been with Joe and with T1 for quite a while. I also started with the Fusion initially as a marketing and events person. I kind of wanted to really find myself in the thick of all of the stuff going on when we did the joint venture in 2019. And I wanted to really shift my sights towards working with our professional players, content creators, all of the talent that we have hosted at T1.
Evan's underselling himself. He was the single-handed reason we got Tyler on T1. Stopped for an entire year, went to Vegas. It's all Evan. So we had Tyler because of this man.
Thank you.
Nice. Awesome. So we'll talk a little bit about the joint venture for T1. And, oh wait, I got a quickie. Here we go. Look at that. So one of the great things about your organization that you've been able to do is talk about bringing esports organization from the East, when I say East, I'm talking about Korea, over to North America. What's that journey been like? So I'll start with the beginning is some of the main challenges. Talk about building a team here, founding the team, bringing it over. What's the cultures like and everything like that. So Joe, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot of cultural differences and just the way you interact on social media versus East versus West, right? I think how we do things in Korea is much different, and we've learned with trials and errors along the way with how we act on social media, myself included. Learning those nuances of what you can and can't say to the different fan bases has been a big part of our kind of journey. We have to be on so many different social media platforms, and we're on Weibo in China. So, the way we kind of communicate to our fans has to be different in each side of the world. The bright side for us is we were already pretty big in the East. We're probably the number one team in Korea, obviously Southeast Asia. We're the top foreign team from China from a fan perspective. But we were relatively new. We were unknown in America. So when we come to America, we're competing against the T1s of America. So you look at TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid, 100 Thieves. They already have all the infrastructure that I have in Korea. They have that here in the States. So for us, we were starting from ground zero and trying to build from scratch in the middle of a pandemic. Our bet was that Valorant would be the next big game. We proved to be right. It's pretty hot right now. I think when they franchise it, it'll be even bigger. But it's definitely been a journey to kind of figure out how to, have a global fan base, because it's great having a global fan base, but then it's also you never want to come across too corporate, because when we have to change the way we speak to meet the different needs for the fan bases, it's kind of a challenge. But the good thing is, from a game perspective, League of Legends, we can talk one way, which is probably very formal and very non-Western. With Valorant and Dota, you can talk trash, you can poke fun at other teams, interact, and it's just more socially acceptable. For our league team, with the exception of Gumayushi, who's really good at shit talking and just as confident as it comes, I do a lot of the heavy lifting on the poking of the bear. So if we're making fun of G2 and MSI or Cloud9 or the other teams, like I kind of get my hands dirty there for them just so they can kind of stay focused on the task at hand, which is winning championships, not domestic titles like they focus on in the West.
Cool. Evan, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I think the only thing that Joe didn't touch upon is probably the business side of things too. Something that we're noticing a lot right now in the context of not really esports, but just gaming culture in general in the West is how much more content-sided it's becoming. I'm sure if there are a lot of longtime esports fans in the room, you guys know how big of a difference there is now compared to watching IPL 4 back in 2014. It's a huge shift, and I think specifically in Western regions, the US, Canada, there's a lot of evaluation that we have to do when it comes to fan bases, how they're consuming the content that the players are creating or stuff that we're putting out internally. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun challenges for sure.
Cool. I'm super curious because you're dealing with such mixed cultures. Esports players come out of every woodwork of life, right? And you never know where the next superstar is going to be. What's it like helping your players do a transfer culturally? Like if you had to bring a team over from the East to North America, how to help them with the challenges they see, some of the cultural shifts that are going to occur. Do you find that the cultures mix really well in terms of the player base?
It's definitely it's a broad range, and it honestly, I'm fortunate to have, like I said, been with the brand and the company for a long time. When I first started, we had our team house for the Philadelphia Fusion based in Los Angeles. How many countries?
We had 9.
9 different countries, 9 different nationalities of players, I think split between 13 people. A broad range of European countries, 4 from South Korea. That is a lot of different languages, cultures, a lot of different things you have to account for when it comes to the talent. Our principle has always been from day one to make each of these players feel as if they're home. And I think the incredible support staff that we have both in the US as well as Korea, whether it's someone setting up a boot camp in Korea or them coming here for an international tour at MSI, whatever it is, I think we've taken a lot of steps to make sure that we're always being as culturally focused as possible and giving players the resources they need.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons too why you see Korean players struggle, especially when they go to the LCS, is you can't just bring a Korean player over and have one translator and that's who they interact with their entire time here. Yeah. It's when you work in Korea, it's a family atmosphere. Like you're with your friends and family pretty much anytime you want. You have access to the foods you want to eat. K-Town's great in LA, but if I could only talk to Evan every single day because he's the only Korean speaker in my org, like after a while, I don't want to talk to Evan anymore. And it's like
I suck.
So you see that struggle, and I think a lot of teams are trying to do that and figure it out. I think Cloud9 did the right thing this year in terms of trying to bring more Koreans into the org to build around Berserker and Summit. Didn't work out, obviously, but that's why you see that happen a lot. But for us, even when we travel to international events, when we go to Iceland, for example, they don't have Korean food in Iceland. Like we brought 6 suitcases of Korean food with us because we couldn't go to the market. It's just little things like that we try to do for our guys to make sure that they have what they need so they can focus on playing games versus the out of game stuff, which gets to be difficult when you're used to one thing for 90% of your year and then you travel for a little bit. So we definitely we learned to make sure we have comforts from home with us when we travel to these types of events.
Cool. Along those lines, another thing that happens a lot in esports is burnout. How do you stave off burnout for players? How do you ensure your players are getting the best support system? The cultural thing is one thing, but also just mentally playing games 8-10 hours a day, practicing.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, so for me, when I got to T1, mental health in Korea, it's something that's not really talked about. It's still a taboo subject. The common phrases that we heard when we got there was just try harder or play more, to work through your bugs, and it's not how it works. I believe in the law of diminishing returns. After a certain number of hours of doing the same task, the next hour is going to make you worse than you were before. So We have a sports psychologist on call for our players, which was unheard of at the time in South Korea. Even during our boot camps, we bring in psychologists to let the boys talk to someone that has no idea who they are, like someone that doesn't know Faker is a famous gamer. And this person, and we did this off season right before this season started, and we went undefeated. They were able to dissect each individual player, their strengths, their weaknesses, their communication styles, and help convey that to their individual teammates. Because the biggest thing about gaming, the most important part is communication. That's what separates amateur players from pro players, is how they communicate in game, how they communicate out of game. So, for us, we try to manage our players' schedules. It's 2022 now. Like, players are paid a lot of money, not to play video games, but it's for all the other things they're doing: streaming, doing sponsored content, appearances, autograph sessions. So, we've had to have, trials and learnings of how to balance that out with the team, especially like T1, where they are immensely popular. We have the greatest gamer of all time on our team. So there's always someone pulling at him for his time, and him being an owner on top of that, he has added responsibilities that the other guys don't. So, we really try to manage the schedules for the players, which I think is the most important thing, because you can't just play games all day. If you're an accountant, and you can only account for so many things all day. You're not going to do 16 hours straight of accounting. Like, at a certain point, you need a break. It happens that our guys play games professionally. When they do breaks, they want to play games, right, as their way to relieve stress. So, trying to figure out how to balance that, kind of help them along in their own personal process. And then, for us, we do like to celebrate the little things now. We've had a lot of loss last year with a couple of deaths close to the organization, and we've learned to appreciate the little things more, even with our run at Worlds and how we've enjoyed ourselves this year being undefeated. Any chance we get, we do steak dinners. That's the kids like to eat steak. When they come to the U.S., they love to eat cheeseburgers. So, Faker knows every city's best burger place that we make sure we get. So, we try to do the little things just to bond with each other, especially this past split where we had to keep a bubble to prevent against COVID. Everything was done at the building, and they didn't get to go to barbecue like they normally would or see a lot of their friends. So we tried to bring those comforts into the actual facility in Korea. So it's something that we've kind of learned across the way. And, we keep constant communication. I think one of the reasons why Polt, our head coach, has been a godsend. He was a former pro player. He went to Seoul National University, which is like the Harvard of Korea. And he understands the toll it takes on players from the outside duties of the gameplay style. So he's kept a really good pulse on the players and gives them added breaks when they need it. Even Faker's asked for more breaks in his later years of career versus his early years. So we kind of build those time periods where they're doing nothing but taking time to themselves. And I think you're starting to see the results now because ever since last July, we've really been able to implement those systems once we made a coaching change, and I think we're kind of reaping all the rewards now.
Cool. That was the next part, is talking about building a team. I think it applies to regular sports. I think it applies to esports. And Evan, this kind of falls in your purview too, but Joe as well. Like, what's some of the things you look for in a player? How often do you get players put in front of you for scouts? Do you just certainly see somebody streaming and go, holy crap, that guy needs to be part of T1? What's usually the landscape on that, and how do you guys look for building the teams that you want to put together?
I think it depends pretty massively. I think we both wish our GM One June was here as well for a certain part of this question, but
Sure.
No, I think I work primarily with content creators, but I can speak to players as well. I try to give input and as much knowledge as I can to our ops team when it comes to any of the games. I think the number one thing, aside from just skill, obviously, I think if anyone is watching Twitch in this day and age, it's pretty darn easy to tell when someone's super cracked at a game. But I think when you're evaluating, players gelling together, being part of something bigger than just sitting on your computer and playing something, you have to evaluate things like attitude, work ethic, motivation, discipline, where they've come from, where they want to go. One of the first questions that I almost always try to ask people when it comes to working with content creators is, I understand you're having a great time, you're growing, you're thriving right now, but what's the end goal? And it's there's a lot of times where I'll have these conversations with people and they won't necessarily have that much of a prepared answer for that. And I try to find people who are focused on things that are more than just the money, right? Creating their own legacy. That's what we do at T1. right? That is what our League of Legends team has done for over 10 years. That's the attitude and the mindset that we want to instill in all of the players across all of our teams. Valorant has been a huge challenge for us. It's something that we want to keep pushing and trying to, identify players of that caliber. Joe mentioned, we made a really big push at the forefront of that game coming out to, have a big name in the space by trying to make signings like Brax and Skadoodle and people with, strong fan bases, right? It's a very, very open-ended question. I think it depends on, what that player or content creator's purpose is at the org. But there's just such a multitude of qualities that you have to look for.
Yeah, I think for us too in Korea, we invest heavily into League of Legends. If you look at the way our infrastructure is set up, we have the main LCK roster, you have a Challengers roster, which you're required to have. We have an Academy roster, which is made up of 15-year-old kids that are kind of that next threshold that could be the next big stars. And then we just launched an Esports Academy that kind of has classes in person taught by former pros that are path to pro for kids that have the potential to go onto our academy system or go into other teams. And also just casual gamers like myself who just don't want to be bad when they're playing with their friends. I've actually done the class, and I'm happy to report, like I had individual coach, so like it was a little cheating, but I learned how to do all my ward placements. I learned how to hit and not die every 5 seconds.
I've got screenshots from my games with Joe as ammunition.
There's a video in Korea.
0-14.
Well, there's the 0-16 game in Korea I did on the Korean server, which Korean server, just for the record, diamond on the Korean server is challenger in America. And I am iron. I am a terrible player, and I lost 0-16. It was like a joke. I would walk down to the bot lane and get killed, and with coaching I was better. I actually won my lane, but we invest heavily, which is something that we're incentivized to do because with rising salaries, and our region is poached for other regions. We don't import players from America or the Chinese league or Europe. Our players are being exported. They're taking our players. So for us to go find the next Faker or the next Gumayushi or the next Keria, we have to spend a lot of money at 3 different levels when they're 14 years old to find someone that's going to pop maybe when they're 3 years later and they're 17. So we're incentivized to do that because our league is being drained of their resources from the Western leagues who are throwing big checks around and not incentivized to have the academy system. That's why you see the LCS and LEC teams buying players. I think eventually what you'll see too is the college leagues, much like traditional college football or college basketball, become their version of challengers teams where they're feeding the players to the LCS or the LEC. But for us, we have to start so young because while we have a large pool, a lot of kids either shift their focus, don't want to focus on the game or pivot. We've had building rosters. It's solving a puzzle. We've had the super team in 2019 where we had all these big names and we fell short to a team like G2 who was a well-oiled machine. And I think part of it is about personality matches. It's not just how good of a player you are at League of Legends. Can you stand each other for the 11-month grind that's about to happen in and out of the game? And I think what you're seeing now and what we've learned with trying different things, the roster we have now with the coaching staff we finally have the makeup of a roster that actually truly gets along with each other and likes each other. And having 4 young kids and Faker, who's considered old by gaming standards, it's worked out really well for us versus having all these high-profile players. And I think Vitality's going through it right now, and some of the other teams have done it. It's not just buying the best players. They have to gel together to make it work in the long run. And I think it takes time. It takes patience. We have the unfortunate scenario where we don't have time to lose. We're expected to win every single game 2-0. The fact that we went undefeated 20-0 was never on our mind. We never thought that was possible, especially in our league. But we have to be like the Red Sox. You're expected to win every single game and win World Series every single year. We're the same. If we don't win Worlds, that's a lost year for us. And all of our guys would say that we're not here to win domestic titles. They're nice, thank you, but we're here to win Worlds. There's 100 teams that fall short of it every year, and it's hard to get back to the mountaintop. We've been close a couple times the past few years, and hopefully this is the year we kind of put it all together and figured it out.
Yeah, I'm a massive soccer fan, and a big term thrown around a lot of the time is mentality monster. just keeping that level head is like the number one thing we always, we want to give these players a voice. Faker, youth, regardless of their experience, we want to make sure they have the proper mentality.
It's also where the internet's the worst thing for players. 'Cause every time they finish a match, like the first thing they do is they're on their phones and they're looking at the articles. They're looking at the message boards and like reading about themselves. And there was a point in the middle of the year where we were reading the articles and they were very proud of themselves. They were undefeated, and you saw the level of play week 8, week 9 slip. And I had a conversation with Polt about that, and he was actually happy we went through that struggle, because now the guys realized that they weren't invincible and they needed to stop, reading all the platitudes about themselves and start refocusing their attention. And fortunately, they were able to kind of do that. But even those on top, read how great they are and start believing it. And for us, we have to believe that we're the underdogs and not, fall into the trap of
Game by game.
Yeah, one day at a time, one game at a time. That's kind of how we focused this year.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that a little bit more, because you talk about undefeated season, you talk about going at the high levels. That can also be a detriment, right? Because you're looking at the organization over a span of 10 years, 20 years. You have those couple of years where you're on top, and then suddenly you hit. We see it in professional sports all the time, right? So I'm curious, some of the techniques you guys use specifically to mitigate that, to keep them grounded, to stop them from reading their own articles, which I would totally do. So
Yeah, I make the mistake of reading stuff too when we win or lose, and it's like,
Yep.
when we're on top, people like me. When we're not, like, man, it's the death threats are not fun. But you kind of learn to just filter those out. I learned about keyword filters, which is really important. But consistency is the biggest thing. It's like, how do you stay consistent for so long? We had a year in 2018 where we were not that great, and then we built a super team in 2019 and kind of got back, but it was artificial. It was a Band-Aid. We got there by, buying our way into the spot for that moment in time versus the longevity. And I think, part of the thing we refocused our time on in 2020 was finding the right kids, the youth talent that was going to come up. And fortunately for us, you look at Gumayushi, Birdall was on our team, Zeus, and Owner. They all came through our academy system. Faker did too, but that was years ago. And we found the right kids to mix with Faker's personality. And his personality and his gameplay has shifted throughout the different years. The 2013 version of Faker, is not the same as he is now. And I think he has a more adaptable play style, because he doesn't need to carry and hyper carry every game. He's able to rely on his teammates. And our biggest thing and our biggest change was finding 5 players that could communicate in game. We don't have just one shot caller anymore, which we had in the past. All 5 guys are able to make calls, and Carrier is one of the best shot callers I've ever seen. And he's done it. He did it to Dom Juan with a backdoor call to the base. He does it. He's playing chess and others are playing checkers. He's 6 steps ahead, and you can hear it on the voice comms, whether it's in practice and scrims or in games. He's so far ahead of him where he's thinking things are going to go. He's playing out the game and telling his teammates what he thinks is going to happen, and 90% of the time, what he says 5 minutes earlier comes true, and it's really impressive to watch.
We joke that he's 17, and that's also how many years ahead he is.
Yeah.
it's crazy. I'm gonna switch the topics from teams to esports in general, which is dealing with investors' expectations, and talk about reading your own articles and people hating the media. But we'll talk a little bit about managing investor expectations. Obviously, for Joe, for Comcast, there's a big buy-in to get into the Overwatch League in the beginning. Look at League of Legends and everything like that you guys are doing. What's that like dealing with? Because from our experience, and I'm sure everybody in the room knows, you get these investors who are older, have no idea what the hell esports is, throw it down, and go, yeah, you go manage it, you get it.
Yeah.
What's that experience like in managing those expectations? That's got to be a big deal.
No, well, so I think I'm fortunate that we're invested by Comcast, right? Who has a long-term view of the universe, right? Versus, I think the worst thing that happened to esports and gaming in general was like all the hedge fund and out-of-pocket money that came in 2017, 2018. People that wanted just to get into gaming because they needed a gaming play, poured a ton of money in, didn't really want to invest in it. They just wanted to kind of glom off the youth and then get out. It's leaving the next person holding the bag, get really sky-high valuations, and then high-five each other at the country club. And we've taken the long-term approach, whether it's with the Fusion, with what we're doing at T1, at G4. We really want to build out the ecosystem and kind of connect with people, and not just take a bunch of money out of your pockets and move on. So figuring out who the right investors are for each space, I think you've seen the shift over these past few years where, you had a lot of people that founded game teams that were former pro players, and now you're seeing a lot of outside money come in. You're seeing a lot of publicly traded teams, which, when you're publicly traded, you see all the warts. Like, you're seeing the losses pile up. I think the misconception is that all these esports teams are making money and 99% of them are losing their shirts. And part of that is because you have to diversify what you're doing with esports. You can have esports teams, but you have to do other things to make money, to make the ends meet. For us, it's about IP ownership. We have a webtoon that's really successful in Asia that's going to launch in May in America. If that does really well, that could be something that we turn into TV, movie, streaming platform stuff. You're seeing a lot of those content creators buy that. Our webtoon is kind of a Ready Player One meets Harry Potter, where Faker is a headmaster of a school where
He's a badass. You guys got to read it.
He is pretty awesome. Yeah. When it launches next month, you'll love it. But they go into the digital universe and he becomes the Demon King, which is his alter ego in real life. But outside of it, you're in high school, right? And you're dealing with those trials. So we have to do different things. We've done a music project. And, it went really well for us. And, we got killed for doing it. We did a music video. We did a song. Everyone made fun of us. And then you look down, like 6 months later, Gen G does a song. G2 did a song. So it's kind of the copycat syndrome. But the part of the challenge that we have is when we do things and we go first, the guy first through the door is always going to get the most shots at him and most arrows. And for us, the natural mentality in Korea is to pull back, apologize, and not do it. But for us, we're fortunate that I have a different mindset. We're just going to keep plowing through it. There'll be times when we make mistakes, but we have to be able to try something different because we can't keep doing the same thing all other 20 premier teams are doing. You have to differentiate, T1 versus TSM, Liquid, et cetera. So it's certainly different. I think our investors have a different perspective than some of the other ones. You're seeing a lot of people with a lot of different investors on their cap table. And I think you're serving a bunch of masters that it's really hard to. Like you have investors that want to help grow the ecosystem. You have investors that want to make money. For us, we try to align with people that want to invest in our companies that have a long-term perspective and aren't just looking to, 3 years in a cloud of dust and get out. We really need that long tail to grow everything we're doing at Comcast in the whole ecosystem.
It's important to be self-critical too. I think a lot of people enter the space with a very presumptuous attitude, and it's really important to kind of recalibrate at times and ask yourself what you're actually doing and who it's for. A lot of the time, it's funny being, I am an esports fan. That's where I come from prior to me working in the space at all. And it is insane how dramatically my mindset changed when I started working inside the industry, just because of how much more thought everything has in it than you would expect just being a fan. And I think that comes to working with the players, that comes to working with the content creators. Anytime we have an event, anytime we have any kind of activation, merchandise sale, we're always trying to think about, not just the stakeholders, but our customers as well. And it's just an ever-evolving kind of process.
And one of the things too, I could save a lot of these orgs a lot of money from these consultants that want to tell them how you actually say esports, how you spell it. Just because you like League of Legends does not mean you like Rocket League, Genshin Impact, MOBA. It's all that stuff. One esports fan is not the same. It's not like baseball where you like all 4 sports or whatever. I'm from Philadelphia, so I like all 4. It's very nuanced. And a lot of the people are they're the esports consultants or these hedge funds that are coming in like Goldman Sachs. Our consultancy will tell you what to do. It's dude, you can just go to a convention and talk to somebody and they can tell you what they like, versus you just regurgitating what I told you and charging me $300,000 for it. Getting those people out of our space is problem solved number one, because they don't want to be here. They're just looking for a buck and move on to the next thing. And I'm sure when crypto and NFTs and webtoons and metaverses and all that stuff, they're looking at it, make money off of that too, and then give you advice on what's the next strategy. And sometimes you have good intentioned people, but other times, for the most part, they're ill intentioned.
Cool. We'll get to that in a bit.
Are they here?
No. I'm going to skip over the promotion because I think you talked really well about that, guys. But I wanted to talk about your fan base, how critical it is to you. How did you find your fan base? And then growing their enthusiasm. It's a very interesting buy-in from a fan's perspective of supporting a team, who to choose, and then aligning yourself with that team, right? And It's really fun to watch. I'm sure from you guys, you get a really unique perspective on it. And then you get to meet fans globally, which is probably one of the most rewarding experiences, is to go to someplace like Iceland, see somebody in a jersey. It's a huge deal, right? So talk a little bit about that and how you guys interact with fan bases, how you keep your players enthusiastic about them and everything like that.
It's funny you mentioned Iceland. When we were in Iceland, we went to our steak dinner after we clinched to go to groups. And we come in, it's me and my team, which is all Korean. We sit down. I guess the waitress, they knew the event was in town, and the waitress came up and was like, hey, our chef is a huge Faker fan. He knows that you're T1. Can you take a picture? I'm like,
So cool.
I'm like, what? Like, yeah, like after dinner, no problem. Come out, this like 6'8" Nordic man comes out of the back, and he's like crying, almost crying, seeing Faker. I'm like, hey, can you take your mask off so you can take a picture with you? And this guy was so geeked up, and like he's in Iceland, and like he's seen, and it was like, we see that all the time. You know, I'll have dinner with Faker, and he's a celebrity. He's not just a pro gamer. He's transcended everything, and you know, we'll eat dinner, and you can see, you know when someone's like looking at you, talking about you, like you like look, there's like a line waiting for him to come to the register to check out, and it's like they're very polite about it, but there'll be times where like the waiters were like, "Can I have your autograph?" I was like, "Dude, we're mid-meal." He's like eating. It's like, "Oh, my shift's over. I need to get your autograph." So it's awesome meeting fans. I think the guys really enjoy it. The younger guys especially, you know, they like being recognized. They like when their posts are liked. They're more into using social media to kind of build their own personal kind of stories and brands and stuff. So, but for us, we had a legacy brand. We had a legacy fan base. It was, how do you grow that? You know, all I've tried to do with T1 is, I haven't tried to make T1 Western. I've tried to just amplify all the things that made SKT T1 great. You know, my challenge has always been that I'm not Korean, right? That I'm always viewed as someone that's coming in and taking someone that it was essentially the national team of Korea and making it a certain way. And I mean, the guys will tell you, I've never tried to make them Western. I've always tried to amplify everything that's great about Korea, but great about the organization prior to me getting there. It's just providing more avenues for them to generate money so we can sign all the best players in the world. Because fans want us to sign, you name the free agent, XYZ, and pay them whatever they want. But when you do a car ad for a sponsor or an energy drink ad, it's like, why are you doing these other activities? It's like, well, I can get you the good players, but I have to pay for the players too. And my good looks is not going to do it. Like, I'll get a ham sandwich, but you know, you gotta find ways to do that. So just little things like that. But interacting with our fans has been like the most fun. Obviously, we've had so many. You know, I've been CEO this whole time. We've been COVID, and this is the first time I've actually gotten out to a conference and a convention, and interacting with fans is awesome, and just hearing them, you know, talk about why they like T1 and. Or even appreciating different games. Hey, they love MK Leo, with our Smash player, is the greatest of all time in that sport. Like, it's been fun. It's been rewarding. I think for us, we've been trying to give our fans different ways to connect with our team, and that's why we launched a fan membership plan that's not NFT related. That we just, you know, allowed them to kind of interact with our fans, and I think, you know, give them exclusive content that way, because a lot of it's. You want to get them away from just only interacting with them on Twitter or Twitch or YouTube, and like give them a kind of a safer space to interact with our guys. That's why I like I don't know if you guys are on the Juked Esports app. Awesome place. I'm not an investor. It's not like, I just think it's a great place to actually have a conversation about esports without dealing with all the other stuff that you get from the different platforms. So it's been fun to be on there. But you know, it's fun growing your fan base. I think it's. You know, a lot of the teams in the West are trying to go east and figuring out how hard that is. I think it's a little bit easier to go east going back to west, given that we have Western ownership. But the biggest challenge you've had is a lot of the fan bases are spoken for in the West. Like they're Cloud9 fans, or TSM fans, they're Liquid, they're 100T. And you know, I think you're starting to see a shift away from fans only being fans of a certain player and following that player around. I think you are starting to see some fandom towards orgs. But there's still fandom towards players. Like if you know, if someone wants to leave and go to a different team, there's a subset of fans that will go with them. But hopefully some, you know, like what you're doing, that they end up staying and liking and appreciating what we're building at T1.
Yeah, it's been a huge challenge. Been trying to build up the Western fan base via avenues like Valorant, via Tyler, a lot of different, you know, plays that we've wanted to make. And I think Joe is completely correct in saying, you know, it wasn't hard for us to get people to understand the importance of our dynasty, right? Everyone who's followed esports or league knows who we are and what we do. The difference is getting people to learn more about what T1 actually is moving forward, what we want to be, the type of players, content creators, talent we want to sign, experiences we want to do for fans. We're incredibly grateful for our history, and it's something that, as you said, we try to expose to everybody moving forward, but it's also about creating the proper future and harnessing communities all over the world that span past South Korea, past the US. We want people to be able to buy a Gumayusi jersey in every corner of the globe, so it's fun. Good challenge.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, the fans are the best part, right? We'll talk a little bit about the tricky parts, which is handling media, handling marketing, somehow when the talent, crosses over with media. Crisis alerts, one of my favorite phrases from the show Community. Talk about when these things hit, how do you guys manage that? What's the perception with media? It's not just media, right? Now you're dealing with other influencers who can get on, talk trash, say all kinds of things. What's that like for you guys, managing the org?
I think my biggest regret during my time at T1 is when we waited so long to publicly talk about the LS stuff when it happened.
Absolutely.
If people think that I can just free reign do whatever I want, but I have bosses too, and I was told to be quiet, right? So it's like, I would never do that again. That's why you see us react so quickly to things happening now, because we've learned our lesson. Like, you can't not talk to your fans, and people just want to know what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. And to sit silent for 3 weeks while Rome is burning, is not a good look. Like, people didn't know behind the scenes. I was talking to LS every single day. He was fine. We were dealing with a lot of stuff. We were helping him. But to the outside world, it's like T1's abandoned LS. What are you doing? Why are the fans fighting each other? And that was my biggest regret, is not controlling the narrative and talking and just speaking. So we've learned that very important lesson, that we don't even, if you look at us now, we respond very quickly to things.
Yeah, it's also about knowing, monitoring the community, right? In terms of both expectation and also the reality of the outcome when something either good or bad happens, and how you respond to it, right? You have to take everything in a vacuum when something happens like this. It can be something as non-issue as our Valorant help sewers, if you guys know what I'm talking about, this whole experience that we have, right? But it's important for us to kind of have plans set into place beforehand, know whether or not we can lean into something, if it's something smaller, a non-issue that we can kind of play, make fun of, be self-critical, like I said, know your strengths and weaknesses, but when it comes to the heavy-hitting PR issues, we always want to have processes set into place across both regions. We have a really solid PR team, almost fully bilingual. Lucia out of Korea is constantly making sure that the players are taken care of, that Joe is watching his mouth on Twitter. We have a lot of really, really incredible employees that are focused entirely on making us look as great as we know we are. So,
and when we can tell people things, we tell them. But there's certain things we can't tell you. I can't tell you negotiations are difficult with XYZ player or what free agents we're looking at. And fans are always like, tell us about this. And I was like, I can't give out. We're competing with 9 other teams that wanting to sign our players. There's certain things I can't tell you. There's certain things we can tell you, and then up to a point, right? So we try to be as truthful and honest and forthright as much as we can. But there's just certain things when you're in competitive sports that you can't give out to your opponents who are also camping outside your players' apartments and waiting to sign them in 2020 or 2019. Other teams that do that.
Still a super new industry too, right? So we don't have a standard in place. Most of the teams are kind of just figuring it out themselves.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing too, if you notice, T1 doesn't punch down. We don't fight smaller teams. We don't make fun of smaller teams. If I'm making jokes, I'll joke with G2. I'll joke with Gen G because they're our neighbors. Dom Juan a little bit. I don't make fun of Sandbox. What is the point? I'm not a bully. So we'll pick and choose our spots where to have fun and poke fun on the internet. But we're not trying to be bullies. We're trying to be good for the space. But there's teams that you can interact with at that level, and there's teams that you can't, and we try to abide by those kind of rules of engagement.
Cool. That's a great answer. Now we're here. We finally reached the point. I talked about the metaverse and NFTs and all the stuff that's coming down the pipe with Web 3.0. I'm super curious where you see esports going in the near future, and probably the best way to say it is which metaverse actually takes off, which metaverse would encompass esports if it does. So how are you guys talking about that? And we'll get to the NFT question after that.
Yeah, so for those who don't understand, like Korea has much stricter regulations than the West does. So we're behind in terms of, I mean, we're regulated in terms of who we can talk to, who we can work with, who's approved in the country to even do anything with. So we've spent the past year just having conversations with different platforms, different, blockchains, metaverse plays. I mean, everything. I think I've seen 100 decks. Every single deck had NBA Top Shot in it. I'm like, did you work with them? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, well, like, great. So for us, it's about educating ourselves. We have a guy on staff named Sejin that's been, really digging deep into this stuff. And I think there's good value potentially for things like a metaverse where you can kind of build out a little world and have your fans come. But what it can't be is it can't be a money grab at every single time we turn around. It's like, give me more money for X, Y, Z, or this access, that access. So it's just trying to figure that out. I think, you look at what Fnatic did and they launched their NFT thing. And I think what Sam did a good job of, their CEO, was actually talking to people for once and kind of letting them ask questions. The worst thing you can do is just announce a project and then kind of go hide in your hole. And, the internet's not indicative of like how everyone feels, but like the vocal part will talk. And I think a lot of people have been burned in gaming about NFTs and crypto in general. I think there's been a lot of really bad projects that have given everyone a really bad taste, and everyone should 100% be skeptical of every project until it's proven otherwise. So for us, we're just trying to find out what makes sense for us. We have to be very, very cautious and careful because, I mean, you look at our fan base, 90% of them are 35 and younger, right? 13 to 35. So we have to be really educated on the sense of like, what does it look like? How are you engaging your fans with it? One of the reasons why we didn't tie our fan platform to crypto or NFTs is because how are you going to make a 13-year-old buy an NFT and like not be able to have access to their favorite team? It just didn't make any sense for us. Now, other teams may have different thesis there, and that's fine. But I believe more in the metaverse and kind of building out a digital world where we can kind of have unique experiences with our fans that don't necessarily have to cost money each time we engage with them. But we've been deliberate, I guess I would say. And whether esports become, I don't know, is it possible to have crypto and esports? Probably, maybe. Has anyone figured it out yet? No. So I think you're going to see a lot more false starts and bad actors get weeded out first before there's a game that really makes sense. But to Evan's point earlier, we were talking, just make a good game, and that's all people care about. If you have crypto or whatever later on, or there's NFTs related to it, like if your game sucks, no one's going to want to play it anyway. So like your cryptos aren't going to matter. So like build a good game and then figure out your universe. And also make sure it's free to play. No one wants to pay $60 for a game anymore. So free to play game, have cool features in it, and then figure out your NFT stuff and crypto stuff later. But it's not going anywhere. Like blockchains here, blockchain games. I think there's good use for those. There's a company out of Korea called We Made that has a cool game. We've talked to Come To Us out of Korea. Like, there's good things happening. There's also a lot of bad things. So it's like until we weed out all the bad ones, the good ones aren't going to be able to get the sunlight they deserve. And you also need to have the right leadership running those organizations. There's NFT folks and gaming folks that aren't talking to each other, and they need to kind of get married together because you can't be a specialist in everything, and you should know what you know and know what you don't know. And if you don't have the expertise, don't try to just figure it out on your own. Like, go get the experts to do it together. And I think if game companies start partnering up with the right style of NFT or crypto-based companies, there could be a good marriage there. But until they figure that out, you're going to have a lot of projects that you don't want to put money into.
Yeah, we're trying to just apply the same process we do with every new innovative kind of piece of media or whatever tech, and that's number one, to learn, and number two, to be very careful and just make sure that we're listening to people, make sure that we're responding to positive, negative buzz. Anytime anything happens at our org, we want to be constantly in touch with our fans. That's the same process we're applying to this whole new industry.
Cool. No, it makes sense. It harkens back a lot to early web, right? I mean, you had the .com boom, everything came out, everybody tried to throw money around very quickly, and then you saw it all kind of synergize into, you know, what we know now. But Web 3.0 is coming, right? Like you said, Joe. You know, it's here. We're already here. It's just a matter of how it shakes out in the end. Cool. I want to talk a little bit about the org going forward. So you guys have had great success in the past bunch of years. Where do you see things moving in the next couple of years? Obviously, there's going to be a slew of new games coming out. That's no secret. You know, the internet's buzzed with tons of titles, tons of different opportunities for esports. How do you guys look towards the next couple of years in your industry?
You know, we try to put teams in areas where we want the game to thrive. You look at why we didn't do a Valorant team in Korea. Valorant's not popular in Korea at all. NA, South America, EU, that's where it's kind of popular. So I hope Valorant kind of figures out a franchise model that's not geo-based, that's kind of, I believe in the relegation system. I think League of Legends should have it too, like these crappy bottom tier teams that are just glomming on to the revenue share, that don't spend any money, that are dragging everyone else down. Like, you look at the LEC, you get a team like Carmine Corp is in the second division there, up to LEC. They have a massive fan base. They can actually do numbers. They can field competitive teams. It should be relegation. Like, I know we paid franchise fees or whatever, but there's ways to give that money back if you get relegated and kind of, you know, give them a stipend to cover their fees while they're gone, and then, you know, allow the bottom two to fall out and the top and the next division to come up, and keep it fresher versus landlocking and, you know, gatekeeping and saying, hey, these are the 10 teams, you have to get behind them, because even in the LEC or LCS, they've already been teams that have fallen out, that new teams have come through. So, like, why not build a system that you can allow people to come up and do that thing? I think you look at Halo, it's a better system than what we have in the Call of Duty League. I think the Call of Duty League, if it was an open world system, it would be amazing. It would go back to the old MLG days. You would see a lot more fire. You'd see a lot more participants, a lot more excitement. And there's still time to change that. Maybe when Microsoft takes over, there could be something different there. We don't have a Call of Duty team because, you know, it's expensive to own those teams, and it's right now that it doesn't make sense for us. But, you know, I think hopefully Valorant does something on the franchising side. It's not closed universe, it's a little more open universe. I wish there was a lot more fan events where it's not just eventized, where these big, like, worlds or things like that. Like, there's a need for, you know, smaller events in and around the world that's not just based in New York, LA, and Dallas. Like, there's other cities in America that can host an esports event. I know we like to go to those cities, but I would love to see, you know, Middle America get some games, Florida, you know, go send us to Wyoming, send us to cool places, Seattle, whatever. Like, we're so centered on East and West. Like, it's just, even like you look at, we're going to Worlds, we're going to New York, we're going to Toronto, we're going to California. Like, it's the same rinse repeat. Like, there's other opportunities out there. I think game publishers exploring that and leveraging that would be really important. But yeah, I think for us, it's not about game expansion so much as trying to find the right personalities to work with our game teams. You know, we try to amplify the teams that we're in. You see, we have a lot of Valorant content creators. We have League of Legends creators. So my next step is to find the right Southeast Asian Dota creators to bring them into the mix. But, you know, the only game I really want to get into, you know, in the foreseeable future is a mobile game, preferably in India. It's a massive player base. You know, I was going to do it in China, but there's regulations there now. So Indonesia, India, China, mobile games. Asia's so far ahead in terms of infrastructure for high-speed internet. You can play, you know, FPS games in the grocery store, where in America we're stuck playing Candy Crush because we were just buffering the whole time. So when America catches up on that side, it'd be great. But mobile games is kind of where everything's going. It's going to outpace PC games soon. So would love to get a mobile game team at some point in the next few years.
Yep.
And win championships, obviously.
Yeah,
Just win.
I was about to say, you're leaving out a key thing there. I think on the talent side too, we just want to keep working to build as much of a Western fan base as we can. Like, this has been my personal task as a marketing events talent person since day one. I love, you know, creating fan experiences, whether that's events, cool pieces of content with our content creators, streamers, whoever it is. We want to keep doing more of that in the future. I think this is the first year, and I think a lot of the T1 staff feel this way. This is the first year where we're really noticing like a big upswing in this region and other Western regions really, you know, caring about the teams and the creators that might not necessarily be the League of Legends team or Faker. And that's something that, you know, all of our staff are really, really enthusiastic about. We want to get, you know, more of an infrastructure set up physically so we can host more events. and just be more active, as a lot of the bigger Western brands are. So we're psyched for this year.
Cool. Awesome. Do you guys have any questions? We did not do a Q&A.
Yes, I love questions.
All right. I'm gonna try not to be a teacher, so we'll go 1, 2, 3. Does that work? We're gonna go back. So you're first, second, third, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead. Okay. Oh, nice. Go ahead.
What was it? So I think we plan on supporting women's Valorant through monthly events and coaching sessions and things like that. I don't want to have a second team right now. We had an academy team briefly and we got rid of it. It's salaries are rising so fast. It's like you're burning through cash and it's outpacing revenue for all the teams. So we want to support the system, the women's scene more through their monthly tournaments and instead of having a team. I think we can do more help there. I mean, my daughter I play Valorant with her. She's higher ranked than me, which is embarrassing to say, and she's 11. But I believe in supporting the women's scene. I think Valorant could be the game where there's opportunities for mixed teams at some point. They should be because it's not gender locked. So, but it's important to invest in the women's scene in Valorant. I think some teams are doing a good job and doing it the right way. Some teams are just kind of having a team to have one. I think supporting the tournaments, giving them opportunities, getting more casters in there, like just the ecosystem as a whole, not just on the competitive side, I think it's really, really important to kind of put money and resources towards.
Yeah, our relationships with publishers, period, are so important. I think whether it's Blizzard, Riot, just being an active part of these conversations and asking questions, how can we help grow this initiative to be as big as we all want it to be? That's something we're constantly reevaluating.
Cool. Go ahead, and we're gonna go right around.
Built different. You're up. Hello.
Recently, I saw Mr. Marsh's interview with Horizon Esports and Doublelift, and it was very interesting that you are understanding really well about Korean esports environment and culture, of course. And with Miss Ashley Kang, you also gave some ideas for LCK's English contents, which I think really good ideas. And my question is that, could I also hear T1's goal or idea in terms of content creating?
In terms of creating content in Korea? Oh, sure. Sure. I hope this part's on camera. Sorry, guys.
We were distanced. We were good.
Well, it only took him an hour to get it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right?
Joke's on you guys.
That'll come down on me later, don't worry.
Yeah,
about
man,
it.
I blame...
I'll protect you guys from it.
I blame Won Jun Choi. He's not here, but I blame him. Our idea of content creation for the league team in Korea or just in general with LCK? Yeah, so in Korea, we try to hire a lot of our former players. We want to give our players that have been legendary parts of our org opportunities post-military careers. So you see, we have Bangi as a coach for us now. We have Wolf back, Piglet's back. Untara and Sky are coaching at our Esports Academy. So we try to create content that fans actually want to see. Obviously, everyone wants to see Faker content, so but we can't just shoot with Faker 24/7. So what we're trying to do is a mix of our branded content, our stream content, and content with our legendary players. And when we have more time, when it was less of a COVID environment in Korea, we were doing content with our former players. Like we do little off-sites and we film the weekend with them. So one of the things I want to film is there's a amusement park in Korea called Lotte World, which the guys made a bet with each other who would win. We never got to do it because of COVID, so I would like to film them at Lotte World, like going to the amusement park and doing that whole scene. And we also have karaoke in our building now, so they don't have to leave the building. You should hear some of the singing. It's impressive. Some of it's not so impressive. I want to put the camera on because it's up there and let people like see what's happening in the karaoke room, because we have a duo room and we have an individual room. But the guys go up there to relax and sing, and Gumishi's singing on stream, but it's fun to watch that stuff and see who picks what song. So yeah, we'll do some stuff like that.
Cool. Go ahead, in the back, and then up front. Last two.
what are some of the biggest legal challenges that you've faced and you think you will face in the future?
Legal? So in Korea, we have a lot more recourse than they do in the West. So we're able to sue people for maliciously commenting on the internet. So we have a lot of those.
Bringing down the hammer. That's what we call it.
Yeah. So we do a lot of that in Korea, and it gets immediate responses. You get apology letters and things like that. You can get in serious trouble in Korea. It's legal to sue for that malicious comments and stuff. So we do a lot of that. I think from a player perspective, you're seeing a lot more agents get involved into the space. You're seeing, a lot more pushes for unionization of players, which I think is a great thing, to be honest. Like probably like the minority in that sense, but I don't think leagues should collectively bargain against non-unionized players. I think there should be, an open world until they're unionized because they need one voice. So I think there's an opportunity there to some challenges in the future if they don't kind of solve for that. And then, really it's about protecting your IP. A lot of people rip off player streams and put that on their own YouTube channel. Like, that's not your content. I know you're getting good viewership, but like, that's my IP. Like, so that you can't get mad at me when hey, like, that's mine, can I have it back? It's like coming to my house and robbing it and then like trying to sell me back like the vase you stole. It's like, so like that, those are little things that are easily fixed, and we try to like handle them the best we can. But the player unionization stuff, that's probably the biggest area you're looking at in the upcoming years.
Yeah, it's changing a lot too, just in terms of how the agreements look, like whether it's for a pro player or a content creator. My job half of the time is literally just discourse 3-4 times a week with an agent or manager about 4 words. So I'd say there's a lot of wishy-washy stuff that people have to just kind of work together on in terms of all of these, huge pieces of paperwork, but yeah.
Cool. Yep. I think we got one more question.
We got 5 minutes. Let's see.
Yeah.
Fire these things. Let's go.
You can bring the mic up right here.
No, he's right here. I can hear him. The internet
Just
can't
for everybody.
Sure.
Check 1, 2, check. So let's say, knowing what you know now, let's say hypothetically an LCS franchise spot were to open up. Do you think that you would be able to adapt your top team, top region strategy in the LCS? Or do you think, and sort of bring the LCS, or like bring a team to new heights that the LCS hasn't seen before? Or do you think the cultural incompatibilities would ultimately just dilute the brand?
No, I don't think so. Bring T1 to America, or just
like
start a new team?
Spot open up and start a new team.
Yeah.
Like new recruitment, new team
I
management.
think separate from Riot.
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay. Got it. No, I think like the system in the LCS is broken. I think they're more interested in becoming celebrities and internet famous versus the grind that you see that we're doing in Korea. Even the bottom teams in Korea are working just differently. We're not on social media. It's just the priorities are different, I think, from the player base. Also, Western players have a different mentality than Eastern players. We have contract negotiations with our guys in Korea. They happen during the one time a year that they happen, and then you agree to a number and you go. My experience in the West is very different. Players are asking about money every other month, right? So mentality is different. So in Korea, your contract is your word, and you agree to it, whether you like your salary or not. Like, it's agreed to. So I think priorities are different. So I think it's really hard to compete in the LCS. I don't begrudge the teams that are buying players. I don't think it's good to have the push to throw out the import rule, because there's only one league that gets punished for the import rule. It's my league. It's the LCK, because you're taking all of our players and you're going to throw them big money. But again, you can pay someone $800,000 to come to America and play. It doesn't mean it's going to work because of everything else besides the gameplay stuff. It's the environment outside of the gameplay that's going to really hurt them. So I hate the push for the import rule being gone, because there's only one league that gets hurt. It's us. So yeah, but no, I don't think I couldn't start a team from scratch in the LCS today.
Yeah, the memes are kind of writing themselves at this point. Like, I think we're called the retirement home now, which I think is, a little bit.
You're part of T1. You're in the LCK.
NA, referred to as the retirement league.
It's like the MLS.
I think it's hard for a lot of the teams to start fresh. Like Joe was talking about, some of these lower end teams that are kind of just sitting there without a real inclination to develop their brand. We're lucky that we've spent 3 years just investing, creating infrastructure to make a 20-0 undefeated team, a world's winning team, soon to be. Yeah, I think that's like the same approach we want to have here, is people are hard to, realize for some people, but that takes a lot of time creating all of that. So we're definitely going to try to do that here.
Cool. Guys, give the guys a round of applause. It's a great panel. Awesome stuff. Joe, Evan, can't thank you enough. Sorry about the masks. We got it right.
All good.
Awesome. Yeah. Cheers. We're out of time, unfortunately, but feel free to come up to chat, say hi, especially if you're fans, for sure. So.